Hi, Tim Newman with Soft Light Studios, and it's some day of the week that I'm not even sure which one it is. I just came back from 24 days in Europe, and I'm really not even sure what time zone I'm in, but it's all good because I got ideas and things that I want to share with you guys. It was a fantastic trip. I didn't get to record and post all the videos I wanted to. The reality of the situation was internet speed over there where I was at was a challenge, and it just couldn't happen. But I do have a lot of stuff in the hopper that we're going to get out to you here starting today and moving forward. We're going to really start to hit the ground running and go full speed ahead. So you got a lot of stuff to look forward to here coming up real soon. Without belaboring that point too much, I want to talk to you about a conversation that I saw on Facebook the other day. It's not the first time I've seen it, but I really spent some time thinking about it. 10 hours on a plane will do that for you. And I really kind of formulated a response to this thought process that I want to share with everybody and have you think about. So the conversation went something like this. It's a newer photographer, and the newer photographer said, I don't feel like my raw pictures coming out of my camera look as good as my JPEG images that come out of that same camera. Is there something wrong with my camera? Is this a dynamic range issue? Why don't they look as good as the JPEGs? And that's an understandable question from a newer photographer, but what's not understandable is the responses that I saw out there. And the responses went, well, JPEG files look better coming out of your camera. They're just a better file type. Well, I have two issues with those statements when I see people making them. One is the JPEG file comes from the raw file. Remember, there's only one sensor in the camera, so that JPEG file has to come from that raw file. Two, it indicates a lack of understanding of the workflow that needs to happen when you're shooting raw. Okay? Now, if we jump back to the film days, and we tend to always look at history as being better than it was, right? You know, we always say, oh, in the good old days. Well, if we jump back to the film days, when you finish shooting film in your camera, when you got the negatives back, you had a reversed colored cellulose frame where the colors were flat and lifeless. And where those colors were brought to life was in the printing process. And what we can now think of in the digital world is the post-production steps are our film printing process. Okay? So if you think back to it, the really great prints were ones that were printed by people that really had great control over the printing process. And if you were a professional photographer, you were very careful in the lab that you selected because you wanted the lab that did the best print work for you. You went and tested all the different labs and went, hey, lab number 2, that's the lab for me because they give me the best colors and the best pop and the overall best contrast in those images. That's the same case here. Those post-production steps, those steps that you do in Lightroom and you do in Photoshop or Capture One or whatever your editing software is where you are the best printer to be selected from. You're the one that's making that best result, okay? And if you don't believe that or if you don't understand that, I want you to think back to the Ansel Adams days of photography. And in fact, one of Ansel Adams' quotes was, the negative is the score, the print is the performance. And what Ansel Adams was saying in his own analogy was, I look at this as the way I look at music, which is the great composers wrote fantastic musical scores, but it's the conductor in front of the orchestra that brings that musical score to life and decides in his or her own interpretation what parts of that musical score mattered the most. That's when you see the conductor standing in front of the orchestra pointing to the trumpets saying, I need more from you, and pointing to the percussion people and saying, really hit it hard here. That's where the conductor's knowledge of music and feel for music comes into play. It's taking that score and turning it into their own personalized performance. In fact, in Ansel Adams' day, he very rarely printed more than one print at a time from a shot in a negative. He elected to print once, see how that one turned out, and then come back and try printing it again. No two of his prints theoretically were the same. He was always tweaking. Let's burn here a little bit more. Let's dodge here a little bit more. Hey, let's combine these two negatives together to get this composite effect. Let's expose the paper in this chemical mix to see if that version of the chemicals gives us more contrast. You have the ability to be the Ansel Adams of today. You can take your negative, your raw file, your score, if you will, and turn it into your performance. I'd like this path through the image to be lighter so that the viewer's eye follows it. I'd like these colors in this area to be brighter or more saturated. You are the conductor making the performance, and what you are looking at is a complete end-to-end workflow. It's not just what comes out of the camera, it's technical mastery over the exposure. It's thinking about composition, but it's also the post-production process. The image and the print can only be as good as your skills across all three of those sets. Keep tuned in to our Softlight Studios channel. Please subscribe down there. Click on the little bell icon so you get updates when new videos are coming out. Should be more coming out soon now that we're back home and we're getting back up to full speed. And like we always say, remember, knowledge equals skills. Practice equals mastery. We'll see you out there.